It is New York-based poet. He is the Walt Whitman Birthplace Writer-in-Residence. He's a person who's been up here to Lowell. He's been our Parker lecturer at Lowell Celebrates Kerouac and has brought poets up from Northport and other places. He's a phenomenal guy. He has a long history with David Amram, and he's going to come up and pay tribute. I'm talking about the fantastic poet, Mr. George Wallace, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it for George Wallace.
Okay. Are the politicians still here? No? I'm taking this jacket off. I only wore it for them. I thought I was going to meet Edward Kennedy. Yes, my name is George Wallace. It's a pleasure to be here. This particular venue, among the many I've been at during the years that I've come up to Lowell, and this is 35th year. It's exceptional for a lot of reasons, including a celebration of Vision of Gerard, 60th anniversary of a great book, a very important book of his oeuvre. So, and this opportunity, which I had no idea, I came up with the idea that that we should do a tribute to David Amram. I thought they were doing it, and I said, hey, maybe I could, piggyback on it. I don't remember, but I'm glad of whatever role I played in that, so thank you for that, Meg. It's great to be here with Meg and to see so many great friends who over the years have shared experiences and memories with David Amram and the Beat Constellation. I had a three-part thing, but if the musicians are eating, I've got a two-part thing. The first is we're going to go through a series of 10 slides, and I'm going to tell you some of the experiences around the country that I've had with David Amram from Northport to here in Lowell and many other locations. So let's do that. It'll take about 8 to 10 minutes. Then the second thing I want to do is discuss with you for about 10 minutes my concept of Tao of David, because there's so many principles and practices that he presents that we can learn from as artists, musicians, and organizers of arts of various kinds, the Tao of David. Hopefully my little compendium and analysis of that will be useful to you. But first, let's take a look at 10 places where we've done some work together. Yeah, that's Larry again. This is in front of Northport Village Hall. Brian Hassett was there that day. We had the marathon reading for Big Sur. 4 cities, Northport, here in Lowell, down in Orlando, and out in San Francisco. And this was the second year that I've been working with David. I was the village historian in Northport at the time, and he got me a connection to John Samples so that I was able to come up and borrow a typewriter and a backpack and a sleeping bag of Jack's and bring it down for an exhibition in 2000. I remember distinctly, before leaving, I said, do you want me to sign some paperwork? And Samples said no, and he pulled out a Polaroid camera and took a picture of me with this stuff, and he said, that's my evidence. Anyway, that next year we did the Big Sur Marathon. That was back in the day when there was no Zoom or anything like that, so putting together 32 people to read 32 chapters of a book in 4 different cities simultaneously over a 12-hour period was pretty daunting, technologically, but made possible because of David's having connected me to so many people in so many different locations who were dedicated to Jack's legacy. That day, like many of you know, he played for 12 hours, backing up 32 chapters of Big Sur. No small accomplishment in itself. Second slide. Can you see that? That's me. That's my house. There's too much light over there. That's my house. He's playing on my piano. That's Carolyn Cassidy in the foreground. I think you can see Adira. And in the background, you can see John Cassidy. This is an after party on Long Island at my house, and David was going wild on the piano. And John Cassidy jumped on the piano and started doing some kind of barrel house piano, and they asked me to go up there and do it, and I didn't know it. Couldn't keep up with these guys, so I was playing with my elbows on the piano. John Cassidy was furious. He said, what is this guy doing? David said, give him a chance. He's classically trained. So David's connection to contemporary Long Island-based poets. It's founded in earlier relationships with the beat, era figures, but blossomed in a host of networking opportunities, among them poetry readings at Gunther's Tap Room in Northport. Some of you may have attended that. The Action Museum, Summerfest in Huntington, many libraries and bookstores in the area. He was also engaged in a major speaking appearance at the War Women Birthplace. Just killed the audience there, just great. So that's the after party at my residence, a private residence, because I thought it was going to be a caption. I didn't know where it was going to go, so I didn't want to say it was my house. Third slide, please. Bradstock. Kevin will recognize David and John DeWitt, who was the bass player for many years in their trio. At Bradstock, a festival on the South Shore of Long Island, organized many years ago by a guy named Brad, and there's a special relationship that David has with the South Shore crowd. He's an honorary firefighter in Davis Park, and he goes to this Bradstock every year, and they'll throw up Grateful Dead bands, and they'll throw up hard rock bands and various bands, but when David comes up, it's pure David. And his ability to get into that scene and make it part of his own is a testament to his versatility. Next slide. New York City. That's a picture outside the C-Note. It was a tribute, I think, it was a part of the Howl Fest one year, and afterwards we gathered out front. You'll recognize Zoe Artemis, another person who used to belly dance with David, and some other people there, a skinny George Wallace, I think. And, David, of course, is a primary denizen of the New York City poetry and music scene for many years at the Cornelia Street Cafe and Bowery Poetry Club and a lot of different areas. Always very generous with his time. Theater of New York, the Jazz Museum at Harlem. I saw him, and Kevin was there at the museum, Metropolitan Museum of Art. He and Patti Smith did a tribute to Jack Kerouac there. So he's all over the place in New York and has been for many years. Next. That is in the Hudson Valley in Beacon, New York. That's Mike Cherkovic, who runs CAPS. And that's David backing up poets from the Hudson Valley and the Ohio River Valley. I said to David, how about, what do you think of the idea of, bringing river to river, having a river to river fest? And just like what Megan said, the big yes came out. He said, yes, of course. And he lives up in that area, so he did the same thing in this beautiful Howland Center. He backed up these poets from both of those locations, up the Hudson Valley. Of course, he lives, or has lived up in that area as well, so it's a primary stomping ground for him and a place to perform with Pete Seeger and other people. Next. Louisville. Viking hillbilly, insomniacathon, impresario, Ron Whitehead, and right, he's over there with David Amram. This is one of the many engagements. I think this one was the Viking hillbilly one, which they did in New York City. Brought people from Iceland over, so it wasn't one of the insomniacathons in Louisville, but there's been a long-standing relationship, and it shows his willingness to reach out to different people. Next slide. Okay. Kevin, you recognize that picture? Yeah, that's Kevin and Adam and John DeWitt again and David. This is posing, I think, outside the front of the Kerouac house in Orlando. And that's a place he introduced me to. I went down there. We had a big festival out in the cupola, out in the garden, in a park, and Carolyn Cassidy showed up, and I learned a lot about Florida from that experience. Next. Okemah, Oklahoma, the birthplace of Woody Guthrie. I was invited down to Oklahoma by some poets. They said, you want to do a reading and a workshop or something? I said yes, and afterwards it happened to be the Woody Guthrie Festival, the 6th year of the Woody Guthrie Festival in Okemah, Oklahoma. The first 5 years, the residents of Okemah, when the festival was about to start, they put up signs coming into town, "Go home, commies, go home, commies." But then they started to count their revenues, and in the 6th year, they put up signs saying, "Welcome, Woody fans." And this, I think, was in the 6th year up on the main stage. To show you his versatility, on the main stage, he was performing for 35,000 people, but that morning, he spent 2 hours with us poets in a local church, backing up each one of us that became and enabled us to be part, as poets, to be part of the Woody Guthrie Festival. Before David's intervention, we were not involved there, so another of his many accomplishments. I think, he's an honorary citizen here. He's like an honorary Oklahoman as well. So, next slide. Studio sessions. This was a tribute to Gregory Corso, soon after Gregory's death, and Casey Sear set it up. You'll see, I know you'll probably recognize Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth. He was one of the people that came in to the studio in New York City to perform. And I mention studios because, he has worked with me and on Northport Poets and on other occasions and devoted his time over in Glen Cove. I said, "Hey, can you back us up for 2 hours?" He said, "Sure," because my daughter had given me 2 hours worth of studio time. And the first hour, each of the poets got to perform something with David, and which became Northport Celebrates Kerouac. We had an hour left over. So David said, "I got another hour. What do you want to do?" So I said, "Well, you want to back me up?" And we did 9 cuts, 9 tracks to a CD. 1 take each track. There was no second takes on any of those tracks, which that's now available on YouTube. So just to show that we have been able to connect in a lot of different ways. The last slide. Since 2001 was the initial contact with David, which resulted in my coming up here. I'll never forget, a couple months after 9/11, coming up here and the somberness of that year, and then driving back to New York City and still seeing those 2 big searchlights up in the sky before they replaced the World Trade Center. So coming to Lowell, for me, has become connected with that sort of intense American experience of trauma and triumph and overcoming obstacles. So I want to thank David for all of those, and the many that you, of course, experienced. He, like you say, was in Philadelphia last week, and he's all over the world. But these are just a couple of my personal experiences with him. So that's the slide part. Now, hangoutology. I call it the Tao of David, because the Tao says, to be a good leader, you have to allow the community to raise itself up, so you become an invisible leader in the background. And when the community succeeds, they say, we're proud of our work because you made that happen. And that's what a Taoist leader does, and that's the Tao of David in a nutshell. But there are various components to it, and I want to go over them one at a time and talk to you about them very briefly, so you got to, some of the nuts and bolts of it, so you can apply them to your own work. First principle: we're family. That there's a beat constellation, and we are all part of it. That there's a community of spirit, the beat spirit, and we're all members of it. That's something that's pan-genre, pan-region, and really pan-generational, because you see David passing these things on to the next generation, including his own family, puts it in practice in his own family. Pan-genre because He can be performing with, Charlie Parker or Dizzy Gillespie, or Patti Smith, or Willie Nelson, and his ability to chameleon-like, shape shift, to be able to bring his spirit and the spirit of the beat movement to those different genres is part of the magic. Of course, pan-regional. I read today a quote. He said, "I equate barroom entertainers with the treasures of European culture." As David's words. Important words to think about just a little bit, and that all the different things that we perform, whether it's something on a doumbek or on a tambourine or with a penny whistle, or with a classical violin or a piano, all count of equal value to him. And understanding that helps us to understand that we have the same capacity to explore all those different genres. 2, community building. His idea of listening and collaborating and being inclusive, as you say, letting people come up to the stage with very little experience or tons of experience and have their moment, is critical to understanding that he understands that there's people at various places in their career. There's some people who are beginners, some people at the tail end of their careers, and he has this capacity to understand that and have tolerance for that, which is something that we all should examine in ourselves, our tolerance for people at different levels and giving them a chance to be included, even if they're not at the particular place you're in. Know your role. Like you saw in Okima, he was able to get up on stage in front of 35,000 people and then back up 15 poets the morning before that. Know your role. Sometimes the leadership role, overt ambassadorial leadership role. Other times it's basically in the background and support. We understand that for ourselves as artists. Sometimes we lead, sometimes we follow. And sometimes we get out of the way. Be the ambassador when called upon. I remember when they auctioned off the scroll in New York City the night before. They had a scroll viewing. It was in a plasticine case in a bar across from Columbia. David walked in. It was just like, nobody knew what to do. David just unpacked his chord, set it up, and just started playing. His ability to turn a non-event into a celebration, into a real party, really struck me at that point. So we do have a role, and we can do that at times. When you serve one, you serve all. When you serve one, you serve all. He said that, David said that his goal was to add something to the repertoire in terms of your own material adding to it. 3, be what you do. Be what you do. And this is more the nuts and bolts of the methodology. The spontaneity, we know what that is. The bop improvisation, which is, taking a tune and working around the core and teasing it and going off into tangents, but knowing where to land so that you've done something creative and improvisational, but stayed within the core of a meaningful, established piece of art. That's what bop improvisation is. Bop prosody, that forward motion. Nobody who has ever spent time with David does not understand his capacity to talk and talk and talk, and you go talk, and you're never going to come to the point, but at the end, he lands. He always lands. It's a beautiful thing. Curiosity, eclecticism, that's so important, in understanding what he brings to it. The instrumentation, piano, French horn, doumbek, Irish penny whistle, tambourine, Native American flute. The ability to cross genre. He worked with Leonard Bernstein, like I said, Willie Nelson, Patti Smith, Paquita Rivera, Duke Ellington, Jack Kerouac, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie. We are driven, and that's just my words, we are driven not by our DNA, but by our openness and our imagination. This is a great lesson to learn from David Amram, the openness to what you can do with something you didn't do yesterday. Positivity, the big yes. Laissez le bon temps rouler. If it's not fun, says David Amram, it's not music. You know this. You've heard him say it. Enjoy yourself and don't be discouraged by what other people say. Just hang out with somebody else. David Amram. Finally, we are witness and legacy to the Amram Tao just by gathering here today. Much of his grown life putting it into practice in New York, Orlando, Colorado, Oklahoma, Carville, Hudson and Ohio River valleys, and Cleveland, San Francisco, LA, here in Lowell, Massachusetts. We are witness and legacy to that community building and the inculcating in all of us of the spirit that he brings to his task as a leader and a follower of this community. I'll just close with this final thought. You know Rafi? Rafi? I don't know. He's got a song, yeah. He said the only reason why I put David Amram on the song is because it rhymes with jam. David Amram and jam, which, you know, is incredibly stupid because, you know, to rhyme with jam is what it's really about. It's all about the jam, says David. It's all about the jam. Whenever you stand up, any of us here to perform and represent, you should repeat after me, just as I did before I came up. Here's one for me and one for the Amram Jam. And that's my intent to do that as long as I'm able. So thank you for listening, and maybe we'll come back.